Hi, this is Frank Lies, and today I want to introduce to you 7 circles and 1 heart to financial freedom. I believe you'll find it to be a helpful framework to take the complexities and the overwhelm of the financial world and make it simple enough for you to see how things fit together and how they work. Let me start with the first 2 circles. Interesting concept here I'd like you to hear me out on. Since 1985, when I began working with individuals and institutions, every single client that I have ever worked with has fallen into one of 2 categories. The people in the first circle spend their money first, and if there's anything left, at the end of the month, they'll save it. The people in the second circle save first, and then they spend what's left after they have first saved. One of the most important concepts that we can understand, and this relates to individuals, it relates to organizations, and it relates to countries, is this. The people in the first circle will spend their entire lives working for and depending on the people in the second circle. Let me give you an example. If someone takes the approach that I'm going to spend my money first and I'll save if there's something left at the end of the month, you and I both know what happens. Does any saving ever occur? The answer is no. Human nature takes over. So, where do those individuals go when an opportunity or an emergency comes up and they have a need for funds? Well, commonly they'll go to the bank, credit card company, mortgage, a loan, whatever. Those funds are made available by those people who save first. So what you see going on here is a cycle of dependence. Those people who thought I'll spend first and save if there's something left, and in fact never get around to saving, are dependent upon, in fact pay interest to, those people who were disciplined enough to save first and then spend what was left afterwards. In every financial decision that we make, in every system that we put in place, we should be mindful that we want to take you from circle number 1 to circle number 2. With that as our backdrop, let's explore more closely the other circles and the heart on the way to financial freedom. What I'm about to share with you next may surprise you. I happen to believe that the most important element in a financial strategy is a bank account. Now, some of you may be looking or watching this today and asking if I have seen the amount of interest that is getting paid on your bank account. Yes, I have, as well as on my own. What might surprise you is that the bank account has never been designed so much about the interest that it pays to us, as much as the interest it helps us to avoid having to pay. Even when I have clients that go back in time and remind me about the days when their money market accounts back in the 70s were paying a 15% rate of interest, inflation was higher. So even though it seemed like they were earning more interest, in terms of its purchasing power, still weren't keeping up with inflation any better than we are today. The primary purpose of the savings account, and the reason why I call it so important and critical in terms of establishing the foundation of your financial strategy, is the discipline of setting money aside is the first discipline that then cascades over into the other disciplines of investing money in a well-diversified manner over time. In fact, as a financial advisor, one of the things I'm required to do when a client applies for one of the more advanced investments is I have to document that they have a sufficient reserve in the bank account in order to allow this investment the time to earn appropriate market rates of return. Now, in the past, you've heard people say 3 to 6 months income is a benchmark that is reasonable for a savings account. I believe in today's world, this number needs to be 1 year's worth of expenses. As we find the economic cycles, and in particular the Great Recession lasting longer and longer, and for many people the period in between jobs getting longer and longer, I think it's even more important that that reserve that we use in the event of those kinds of emergencies give us the freedom to ride through those periods of transition without the necessary use of debt. So number 1, we want to be certain that we utilize the bank account not so much for the interest it will earn you, but the interest it will prevent you from having to pay. but we know that those earnings are not likely to ever keep ahead of inflation consistently over time. That's where the investment circle comes in. The investment circle is ultimately where we want the majority of your wealth to accumulate. This may include stocks and bonds. It may include mutual funds, annuities, retirement accounts, commodities, precious metals, etc. are all parts of a diversified financial plan. But we know the purpose of a diversified financial plan is to give your wealth the best opportunity it can have to stay ahead of inflation as you attempt to bring to fruition a point of financial freedom. So while the first circle qualifies you for the second circle, we know that over time the majority of our net worth needs to be in a diversified investment portfolio to stay ahead of inflation and to create the future that you deserve. Let's transition to the other circle, the insurance circle. There's much confusion and complexity about what goes on in the insurance circle, so let me simplify it by saying all insurance is designed to fulfill one primary objective. It buys time. Disability insurance buys time if someone can't work to replace their earnings until they can get back to work and continue on to fruition their financial strategy. Life insurance buys time for someone's family or dependents in the event he or she unfortunately dies prematurely and leaves a financial burden on their family. Insurance buys the time for those responsibilities to be taken care of as well. Long-term care insurance buys time for someone to be able to cover the costs of long-term care without having to deplete their own assets. So the primary role of the insurance circle is one that buys time for the other parts of a coordinated financial strategy to take place. Lastly, let me ask you this question, and we're going to focus on the final two circles when we look at this. Let's assume someone makes the decision that they're going to go about an investment strategy and they're going to set aside $200 a month. They're going to do this every month for a 5-year period of time. I give you two options for where that $200 a month can go. The first option is the bank, and let's say the bank is going to pay you 2% interest on that. The second option that I give you is a tin can. The tin can is going to pay you 0% interest. You're going to save $200 a month, every month, for a 5-year period of time in either the bank account or the tin can. My question is, at the end of the 5 years, where do most people have the most money? Now, the bank account has easy access. All of the ways you're accustomed to being able to get access. You can stop by your branch, you can use your ATM card, you can bank by phone. The tin can, however, operates a little differently. The tin can opens up each month for the $200 contribution to go in. Once that goes in, the lid closes, and you cannot get your hands back on anything that is in the tin can. It only opens up again once the next month for the next $200 contribution to go in. This happens every month over a 5-year period of time. The tin can opens to receive the $200 contribution, but cannot be accessed otherwise. So my question to you is this. At the end of the 5-year period, where do you think most people have the most money? I've been asking that question to clients for over 25 years, and the answer is always the same. They smile, and they say they'd have more money in the tin can. And I ask them to explain why. And they'll smile again, and they'll say, well, I can't get my hands on it. Because if I can get my hands on it, I'm inclined to spend it, which is human nature. And I completely agree. And if you think about it and look just a little bit more closely, tin cans have been successful tools for wealth accumulation over the decades. For years and years, home equity was a form of a tin can. We paid our mortgage like a bill, our home equity accumulated, and I would even suggest that the period in time at which we made that tin can too easy to access happens to coincide with when we saw the real estate market turn into a significant decline. For many people, their retirement plan is another tin can. They can put contributions in but can't get access to it prior to age 59 and a half or their normal retirement. Some people use insurance vehicles as a tin can. There are many vehicles, but the common characteristic is this. It's not so much the rate of return that determines the success of a financial strategy, as it's the systematic way of making disciplined contributions and not having access to the money. So let's recap the 7 circles. We started first with the 2 circles as a point of comparison. Those people who spend first and then save if there's anything left over will spend their entire lives dependent upon and working for those people who are disciplined enough to save first and then spend what is left over. Then we talked about the bank being the important first circle because that's where we form the habit of setting money aside that can help not so much earn us a great deal of interest, but help us to avoid paying a significant amount of interest when emergencies or opportunities come up. But we transitioned into the investment circle because, over time, the strategies that give us the best opportunity to stay ahead of inflation come from the investment circle. The insurance circle's primary role, one of buying time for everything else in the financial strategy to unfold. And lastly, we looked at the 2 circles of giving you the opportunity to set money aside either in the bank account or in the tin can, and we came to the critical conclusion that the success or failure of an investment strategy is not so much the rate of return, but the disciplined, systematic way of setting money aside and leaving it there. But there's one more element. In fact, it might be the most important element. It's the one heart that is part of the 7 circles in one heart to financial freedom. Having worked with individuals and institutions since 1985, I observe a common characteristic among those people who have achieved a significant measure of financial freedom: generosity. Those individuals and institutions view giving not as an obligation or a responsibility, but a privilege. If we think back to the best, first, and greatest book ever written about wealth management, there's a quote that goes like this: "Test me in this, says the Lord God Almighty, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven and pour out so much blessing that you will not have room enough for it." In all of that great book, we are discouraged from ever testing God, but in this particular passage, we are encouraged to test Him. That test was referring to tithing, or the opportunity, the discipline, the practice of setting money aside every week to support ministries, churches, charities, causes that are near and dear to us. For you, it might be signing up for a contribution to the United Way. It might be contributions to your church. It might be supporting a worthy cause like Wounded Warriors or hundreds of others. But the characteristic that I find that is key is people who achieve significant measures of first perspective and then financial independence also tend to be folks with very generous hearts. I highly encourage you to keep that heart on your grid for your 7 circles in one heart to financial freedom.